You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. As always, it's your guy, Pat Lane, here with my man, Matt St. Jean. And Matt, since we've been on last, the Boston Celtics have finally, it's been so long, Matt, almost 6 whole years since a Boston area team won a championship. They finally broken the curse and broken through and won a championship. And of course, Banner 18. And what a way to do it, winning at home. Convincingly, an awesome sight.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and it was just, I predicted Celtics in 5. It went just about the way I thought it was going to go. The Mavs are a good team that overachieved in the playoffs and ran into a team that was much, much better than them. Celtics very well rounded, and I think Tatum getting that Game 5 performance, over 30 points, over 10 assists, was awesome. He was the guy that the engine that ran the whole team for that last game to clinch it home, which was awesome to see. Love that they're getting the monkey off their back now. Seems like they are celebrating big time already. And by the time some of you are listening to this, the parade will have either started or may already be over. Maybe you're listening to this on Friday morning on your way to the parade. And if you are, enjoy. But yeah, I'm sure they're going to have a great time. Joe Mazzulla going around Boston, just carrying the trophy, might be my favorite thing.
That guy's a legend, an absolute legend.
Psycho in the best possible way. Let me say, that man is what, 36?
I think so, yeah.
This is his first really full year as a head coach, if you're including like the off season and the lead up to the season into it. He's an NBA champion. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that with the roster and the GM and everything, but he's got to be one of the brightest stars in the basketball coaching world at this point. His youth, his experience, what he's turned that into, and his accolades now. The way he got buy-in from that roster. And, I mean, they were locked in all playoffs. And they only lost 3 games. This team played fantastically. So,
when you can see the love.
Boston's got another legendary coach, potentially.
That's right. You can see the love they have for him, too. They play hard for him. They work hard for him. It's awesome. It's awesome. So, also, I forgot to mention, of course, that this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks and Game Time. Prize Picks, of course, is the daily fantasy sports app of CLNS Media, and Game Time is the official ticketing app of CLNS Media as well. Maybe you use Game Time to get in there. And so, Thad says hello. He is a Kings fan. That's right. I always forget that. A Kings fan. Says congrats to the Celtics. Look, man, this is one of those years, and it's funny. They're already trying to tarnish the legacy. They are trying to say, there's this, and Tatum didn't react the right way, and it was all staged, and he's a phony, and blah blah blah. And it's like, dude, my favorite part about all that criticism is that the people that are saying this stuff, right, are these kind of new age people. Their GOAT is LeBron. LeBron has never done anything unstaged in his career, in his life, maybe. His whole life is staged, he's
the corniest dude, and I'm fine with that. Like that, that I think is one of his more likable qualities.
Yes.
But you can't, which it's just, I don't know. It's annoying to people will nitpick this team, but also they got the trophy. They're gonna,
and then
we'll chance to run it back next year. Whole team's coming back.
That's what it comes down to, right? It comes down to, they didn't play anyone. Okay, well, they were 14 games better than everyone in the regular season. What do you mean? Well, yeah, but still, their path was easy. Okay, well, but wait a second. You picked the Mavs to win the series. The majority of people picked the Mavs to win the series instead of the Celtics. And I know that the betting money was on the Celtics. That's true. But, the talking heads that are all saying that the Celtics had nothing are like, come on, man. This just, it's just silly. Well, and so, there's nothing you can do about it. And honestly, it doesn't matter. We don't care because we won. So it doesn't make a difference if they complain.
Well, what I don't love is ESPN out there, company that runs a sports book now using their media side to push the Mavs winning with 9 of their 17 analysts picking the Mavs to outright win the series when they are huge betting underdogs. I understand some of the arguments for why you think the Mavs might win, especially with how much better they looked after the deadline and how good some of those pieces had played for them. But man, I don't like that look.
No.
I like that look.
Well, and this is the thing.
I just don't trust it.
And this is the other part of it for me is that, 89% of the money was on the Mavs. Yikes. 89% of the money. That tells you that people are listening to those guys that are talking about the Celtics aren't proven and they're not this and they're not that. Celtics were the best team. It wasn't even close. It wasn't close. The Celtics were clearly the best team. Yes, guys got hurt, and there's nothing you can do about that, right? But the Celtics were the best team all year long. And people can question Tatum and they can question Brown, and that's fine, and I'm okay with that. They're allowed to do that. But again, Tatum led the team in points, rebounds, and assists. He did it for the finals, and he did it for the entirety of the playoffs as well. He was really good all playoffs. It's just that you wanted him to score 35 a night, and it's that's not realistic. You can't realistically ask that guy to put up 35 points a night, especially when the team around him is so strong. So it's just one of those things. It seems silly to me. It's just one of those whatever.
One thing I really liked about the Celtics team is the way that they built to kind of let opposing defenses take away what they want to take away and still punish you, which I think is true for any kind of championship team. If we're looking at offenses, any sport, that is how you win, how you become a good offense. You can become a good offense because you're really, 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 really good at one or two things. A lot of times those teams will fall at some point, though, because all it takes is one team somewhere that finds the one trick to stopping that one thing. The 2007 New England Patriots for an example of that. In some ways, you could argue the 2010 Patriots were the better offense because of their efficiency and the way they could attack you in multiple ways. They only got stopped in the playoffs because they played a team that played them twice in the regular season and had one of the best defensive coaches in the last couple decades and a really good unit in an off night. But the Celtics, the whole thing was about having guys who were really good at taking the ball to the basket, and then the defense collapses and you kick out to guys who can hit open threes. And if you want to translate that over to what the Patriots are trying to do, the whole idea, I think, behind this offense is that you're going to try to run the ball so the defense is collapsing on that and it gives you the shots on the outside. One of the things that makes the Celtics offense so good is that they'll still hit the threes, even if it's contested, even if it's close, even if the other stuff doesn't work. And I think that's an area where the Patriots really have to get to. Can these receivers make those plays for you down the field, even if the defense is trying to stop that? That, I think, is something Patriots have not had in a long time, the ability to make a play even when the defense knows something is coming.
Right. Well, and I think the other part of that is that, this is where you have to give Brad Stevens all the credit. We have to look at it and say, he built the team to be able to withstand those things. He brings in Drew Holiday. Why does he bring in Drew Holiday? Because he knows that it gives an advantage over Malcolm Brogdon and over Marcus Smart, because he's a better facilitator than either Smart or Brogdon was. He can typically stay healthy, more healthy than those guys can. And he also is a guy that can hit the open shot, right? He can score in bunches if you need him to. Now, Marcus Smart can do that from time to time, but he's not as prolific as a scorer as Drew Holiday is. Holiday didn't mind taking a back seat, but you got him for the defense and the scoring. And the same thing with Porzingis. Porzingis gives you, now, of course, Porzingis gets hurt, but Rob Williams got hurt as well. And it's an upgrade over someone like Rob Williams because he is multidimensional. He can hit that outside shot. He can hit that mid-range jumper. You want to put a guard on him on a switch and have him outside the key? Great. He'll bury a jump shot. It's easy. And so that really comes down to the GM. So then it becomes, if we want to transition to the Patriots, it becomes, how do we then build this team, right? And we build this team by doing what they've done, which is trying to focus on the offensive line as well, right? Locking up Michael Onwenu, who's the best offensive lineman they have, trying to go out and get more guys. throwing more assets at offensive line. Now, did they do that enough last year? I would argue no, right? You would say, you can make the serious argument that Jake Andrews should not have been the pick, right? And that they should have taken the kid from Ohio
Are you
State.
thinking of DeJuan Jones?
Thank you, DeJuan Jones, right? They should have taken DeJuan Jones instead. And so that's one of those things where you look at it and say, maybe they didn't use the assets, but what they're trying to do is that they're trying to use those assets to get better on the offensive line. And then you draft 2 wide receivers last year. You draft 2 more this year. You draft a tight end this year, late round, but you draft a tight end this year. And so you're trying to build your offense the way that, not the Celtics have built it, but the way the Patriots have built it in the past, where, hey, we're signing Rhamondre Stevenson, right? And so that's one of those things that, like, we're trying to build the offense the right way and build it into an offense where you can't just take one thing away. Oh, you want to take away the run? Okay, we can throw on you. Oh, you want to take away the pass? Okay, we can run on you. Oh, you want to take away the short pass? Okay, we can throw deep on you. And so those are the things that they're trying to do. And again, there's a bunch of rookies. We don't know exactly where that's going to go, but that is really how we're going to decide whether they can be successful for, the short term, and then even the long term, is how well they can do that, A, with the general manager, and then B, with player development as well.
Yeah, and that's the key coming up. And that Celtics dynasty started with a number 3 overall pick.
Yep.
That obviously Jaylen Brown was the first guy in there, and things started to take shape shortly thereafter he came in, as he has developed a very long developmental arc for him. He's had steady improvement throughout his whole career, and Patriots are here with their number 3 overall pick, trying to get things started in the right direction. They're going to have to add more pieces around him, but excited to see what this turns into this year, and maybe Gerard Mayo can take some lessons from Joe Mazzulla up there in Boston.
I'd be all right with that. By the way, you mentioned the 3rd pick. Can we just for a second here? Because the best part about this is that Philadelphia and LA had the number 1 and number 2 pick in those 2 years. And of course, the Celtics had the number 1 pick in the Fultz year and then traded back to number 3. But nevertheless, it went Sixers, Lakers, Celtics. And in year 1, the Sixers took Ben Simmons, the Lakers took Brandon Ingram, and the Celtics took Jaylen Brown. And then in year 2, the Sixers took Markelle Fultz, the Lakers took Lonzo Ball, and the Celtics took Jason Tatum. And it is just absolutely incredible that we can look at those 2 teams who probably, if we had to take a poll out there, I would say hate the Celtics more than any other fan base in the world. The fact that those 2 teams were in front of the Celtics and drafting in that spot, and in back-to-back years screwed it up and the Celtics got the best guy, just incredible. And it could be a similar situation. And again, I'm not going to say it is. But it could be a similar situation in Washington, where Washington last year has pick 16. They take Emmanuel Forbes. The Celtics take Christian Gonzalez, who seems to be the significantly better player. Now, he didn't stay healthy last year, so we don't know. But Forbes looked really bad last year, which I loved. I loved.
He got
Forbes,
hung out to dry by his defensive coordinator too.
That's also true.
How
but
Jack
nevertheless,
Del Rio still had a job in this.
I don't know how anyone could look at their 2 tapes and choose Emmanuel Forbes over Christian Gonzalez. But nevertheless,
and I like Forbes too.
right. Me too. I mean, like I said, he was my guy last year. I loved Forbes. Yeah. And then this year, to have Washington at 2, again, the pick before the Patriots, and take Jaden Daniels. And again, we'll see. I would have taken May over Jaden Daniels. I would have traded out of number 3 if it had been Jaden Daniels. In fact, I felt that strongly about it. And so, but we'll see how it works out. But if the Patriots end up having Pro Bowl caliber guys at corner and quarterback, we have the Washington Commanders or whatever they end up being, to thank for it. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. But from the basketball side of things, man, the Sixers, like Ben Simmons obviously was the right pick at the time. You couldn't have known this was going to go how it ended up going. Markelle Fultz, I think, is probably the same thing too. The Celtics really read that correctly by trading back out of that spot. The one thing that really confuses me in this whole thing is Al Horford. Sixers had absolutely no idea how to use him as a player, and that's like the one place where Horford has played where he like hasn't been at his best, other than that 1 year in OKC where he basically didn't play.
Yeah, no, they essentially benched him because they were trying to get the young guys and they were trying to tank. Really,
But in Philly, it's just
it was really weird. Yeah,
and it was they didn't. So the one thing that the 76ers have not done is find ways to get good team fits around the players they already have. And that's something the Celtics did incredibly well. And I think, one of the key parts to building a championship team is self-scouting. It's self-evaluation. It's knowing what you have in the building and how good it is. And I think that was one of the areas for Belichick where we saw things start to slip. Your self-scouting internally told you that Devontae Parker needed a raise and an extension. Not sure how we got there. Your self-scouting on some of the offensive line stuff was not good. Your self-scouting on the tight end play and why it wasn't working was a total miss. And now we come into this new regime and, self-scouting is saying we're keeping Rhamondre Stevenson signed today with a 4-year extension. So, we'll have to get into that. And we can talk more broadly about, what the internal evaluation that the organization has and with all these extensions that they've signed. I want to do an ad read before we get into it.
Yeah, let's do an ad read before we get into that. Actually, before your ad read, do your ad read now. I'll do the softball stuff at the end of the show.
Okay.
Go do your ad read and then we'll get into Rhamondre.
All right. Well, the NBA Finals may be over, but you can still use Game Time to go get whatever tickets you want to get for this summer, or if you're already starting to look ahead to when the Celtics are going to open next season on a banner night at TD Garden, make sure you use the Game Time app to get tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can even use Seat Views to get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The Red Sox are on a little bit of a hot streak right now. Trying to head off to Fenway, see the Sox. Go download Game Time and use that code and get some cheaper tickets to go up, see the Sox, get a beer, get a hot dog while you're up there.
Yep, I'm excited. Like, we get some friends coming in from France this month. Actually, they're spending like the month with us, and they were here in 2004 when the Red Sox won the World Series. And they fell in love with the Red Sox. So much so that they like downloaded the MLB.com app or whatever, and they were staying up to like 3 a.m. watching games the next year and stuff. Like, it was awesome.
I love that.
So we're taking them and their kids and all my kids and my in-laws to the Red Sox game. I don't even know the date, but it's Hawaiian shirt night. So we're gonna get in early, get Hawaiian shirts. So that'll be fun. So
they're doing a giveaway of Hawaiian shirts?
They're doing a giveaway. Yeah.
That's
so
fantastic.
I'm pumped about it.
Oh, that's so
I'm pumped about it. So that'll be fun. So it's like their first time going. Oh, that maybe not their first time going, but the kids' first time going to Fenway Park. So that'll be fun.
That's man. Let me tell you, like, obviously there's questions about the product on the field points and the investment in it, but that stadium is so much fun. It's a great environment.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the food is good. I haven't been up to Fenway in a bit now, so I'll have to make that pilgrimage.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I was supposed to go see a game last year, and it got rained out, so that ended up being a bust.
Yeah, well, you know what are you gonna do?
That's baseball. Part of it.
Yep, exactly. So I think, listen, I want to get into. I think there's a lot to get into with the Rhamondre Stevenson thing, but I think one of the things that I think makes the most sense. And one of the takes about it that I really like is lie or love, not both. That's a good name. It says keep showing players they're valued, and Mondre has earned every dollar. He's been a top 3 offensive player when healthy since his rookie season. Excited for this team again. This to me is the point. And you mentioned it before, right? They re-sign Onwenu. They re-sign Barmore. They re-sign Kendrick Bourne. right? They re-sign now Rhamondre Stevenson. They're keeping their talented. They re-signed. Didn't they re-sign Josh Uche too? They re-signed Josh
That was
Uche,
a
right?
1-year deal, but yeah.
1 year deal. But nevertheless, they brought him back. They re-signed Anthony Jennings. Like, so you bring these guys back in that you feel strongly about, that have earned, right? That have earned to come back. And what you're showing them is, hey, we're going to take care of you, right? We're going to take care of you. And I think the way Bill Belichick did business was notoriously challenging, and it was hard to deal with and everything else. And I think that there's merit to that. But the thing is that you can't do that if your team sucks. You can't. It doesn't work. And so you have to have a good team in order to be able to do that. Now, he kind of did it a little bit at the beginning, but like he didn't do it too much at the beginning. He basically said, we got to change this locker room. And so, yeah, he jettisoned some guys, just as Bill Parcells did in 1993 when he came in. But for the most part, he was loyal to those guys early on as well. He did the same type of thing, right? And so you're trying to show these guys that, hey, we care about you. We want you to be part of the guys that turn this thing around, right? And that's where we're at right now, you know? And again, and Freddie asked, would Bill Belichick give him $9 million a year? Absolutely not. He wouldn't have. In this situation, though, he might have. Like, so it just depends on Belichick was stuck in his ways, and I don't know. But again, you're trying to change the culture here, and this is the culture you're trying to do.
Well, I think in some ways you're also trying to keep the culture. Like Rhamondre Stevenson's a good player who's still he was here with Ivan Fears. He knows the deal with that culture and how running backs work together. He's a good player, and like you could say it's $9 million per year. We don't know explicit details yet. Functionally, I don't think it's actually going to be $9 million a year because you have guaranteed money, you have bonuses, you have outs at a certain point. I believe it was reported that was an $8 million signing bonus. I believe.
No, I think it was a little bit more than that. I thought it was 17.
No, 17 guaranteed.
Oh, 17 guaranteed. Sorry.
But I believe it was an $8 million signing bonus. I'll have to double check that. But if that's the case, you can cut him after not 2 years. So this kicks in next year. So he'll be here for this year. And then if this new deal starts, you can cut him 2 years into that deal. And I believe, based on the way I'm reading this, the only money you'd be on the hook for is the $4 million prorated from the signing bonus, which $4 million in dead cap or something like that is not a big deal.
Nothing.
It's a guy who's you can do everything as a running back. He can pass protect. He can get out and catch the ball when you need him to. He's a good runner. Can run in multiple schemes. He's got a lot of experience there. Largely has not been injury prone either. He hasn't had issues there except for this past season. So, I think this is the kind of guy you want to keep. It's not really that much money. You aren't guaranteeing him a ton, and you take it year by year. But I think he'll be in the building for the next 3 seasons. That's the way I'm reading it, which is good.
Right, and that's the thing. He's still fairly young. I know running backs kind of peter out early. I get that. I understand that there's a short shelf life for NFL running backs, and that's totally true. But you need good players. Like, you are starving for good players. Rhamondre Stevenson has been by far the most talented player on your offense since the day he was drafted. It's not close. There's no one that's even approaching as talented as Rhamondre Stevenson is since he's been drafted. And so you look at it and say, okay, well, if that's the case, we have to keep this guy around. And as you said, Matt, all right, we gave him 2 years. We can't get out of it for 2 more years. So we have this year, we have 2 more years. If we have to get out of it after that, we can if we need to, right? And so, not that we feel like we're going to need to, but we might need to. And if that's the case, then fine. Tayler Kyles was talking about how he had a fairly small workload in between, between JUCO and Oklahoma. It's not the end of the world, right? And here's a guy that's 26. He's 26 years old.
His last year on the deal would be his age 30 season.
Right. So it's not as though you're worried about him falling off a cliff this year or next year. Sure, maybe in a few years, who knows? But again, he had missed before last year. He had missed one game, and it was because of illness. And so, he's a fairly, at least up until last year, he was a fairly reliable player to be on the field, which is good, and that's what you're looking for. So we'll see.
I can talk about wear on the tires with him. He's at 499 career rushing attempts in the NFL. For comparison, a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, that's what he had way more than that in his first 2 seasons in the league,
Right.
and he was like a workhorse type guy. And you can tell that by bringing in Antonio Gibson, there's clearly a plan to make sure that Stevenson is not like he is an every down back, but they're not going to make him be the workhorse this year.
Right.
Which is how you maximize him, I think. And I think this is fair value for a player who's a good player and one of the most talented players in your offense right now. And hopefully by the time this deal is done, he will be the least talented of the skilled player guys you have on the field, because you've upgraded all those other spots.
Right.
You solidify this spot for not a lot of money. And you look at the future, as of right now, not factoring in this contract, because Spotrac doesn't have it yet, the exact year-by-year details. Patriots have $115 million in cap space next year. Even if they front-load this, which I wouldn't hate the idea of front-loading the contract a little bit with so much space next year.
True, yeah.
It's not going to cost them more than $15 million.
No.
So they're going to have, after this, still $100 million in cap space next season. Like, I think you have to. I understand looking for value in contracts, but also sometimes you just need to put players on the field, and not all 53 contracts you sign are going to be value deals. And ideally, 10 to 15 of them are going to be built-in value contracts because they're draft picks and they're cheap.
Right.
So if you have 10 to 15 guys that are value deals for you, if this is a little bit expensive for Rhamondre Stevenson, that's fine. You can totally absorb that. If Drake May is what you think Drake May is going to be, then nobody's going to remember the Rhamondre Stevenson cap hit.
Correct. And so I just want to pull Gary's thing up here, because Gary's comment, I think, illustrates a great point here. I love the front office giving these extensions because they understand the process of having a solid foundation or floor to work up from. That to me is the point. You see these contracts that they're giving out, they're 3, they're 4-year extensions, right? And you're doing that because we're not going to be a great team this year. We're not competing for a playoff spot this year. We're not. Yeah, we can win some games and we can be competitive, but we're not realistically a team that is in the hunt this year. We know that we're not. But in 3 years, we might be. And if we are in 3 years, we've built this foundation of good players that if we draft and develop correctly, and if we hit on some free agent signings, and maybe even trade for a guy or two, that foundation of good players can turn into a good team. There's a lot of work to do. But if you hit on Drake May, if you hit on just one of Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, right? If you continue to develop Demario Douglas, if you hit on any two, pick 2 of the linemen. If you hit on 2 of them, 2 of the young linemen, right? Whether it's City So and Caden Wallace, or City So and Layden Robinson, or whatever, right? So you hit on a few of those guys, and now all of a sudden you're saying, okay, we got a good young roster here, right? If you continue to develop Keon White, if you continue to develop those types of guys, now you're looking at it saying, all right, we can now compete, right? And if Drake May is that guy, so that's what they're trying to do. That's what you're buying. That's the idea. And you say 3 years from now, if we're super competitive, it's because we started with that floor, with that foundation. And in 3 years, we might look at it and say, okay, it's time to move on from Rhamondre Stevenson. We had that contract. Hey, you were a nice player for us, but you're over the hill. We have this other guy that, whatever, we drafted in the 5th round that we like. Fine, you can do that. But you can't do it without having that foundation of good young pieces. And I think that's the point, and that's what you have to do, and that's what they're doing. And I think that is so important to the success of this team over the long term.
Well, I think you talk about building the foundation. Another key part of that is that all of the offensive guys that they've re-signed are versatile pieces. Rhamondre Stevenson is a 3-down running back. He affects the game in multiple ways. Mike Onwenu, Big Mike, They signed him as a tackle. We haven't even gotten to training camp yet, and he might be back to guard. But he's a good player. You can put him somewhere on the line. He'll be part of your best 5. Hunter Henry. It's just like a versatile tight end. Like, he can be a decent blocker when you scheme him up for it. You can line him up in the slot. You can line him up in line. You can line him up on the wing, like wherever you want to put him, and he can just win for you. He's decent possession body. And Kendrick Bourne is another guy who can line him up at a lot of different places on the field. And he'll make plays for you. He's not a truly elite receiver. I think on a championship team, he's probably your wide receiver 4. But he's also a really good wide receiver 4 because he can win from multiple spots on the field and make plays for you. Like, he's the type of guy where, all right, we're going to give, Pop Douglas a breather. Oh, well, it's Kendrick Bourne who's coming in for him. You don't feel like you're dropping off too much when that happens.
Right.
It's still a guy who you can trust. And all the guys we've talked about, I can't speak as much to Rhamondre Stevenson, but the other guys I think are all leaders for the team. Hunter Henry is a captain. Kendrick Bourne, a guy who's stepping up in that respect this year. Michael Onwenu is the leader within that offensive line. And I don't know specifics about Rhamondre Stevenson as a leader, but he's the veteran running back in the room now. So he's being asked to take on those responsibilities. And they're giving him this deal. You look at the other contracts they gave out, they must feel good about what they think you can bring in that room. So, that's having guys who put this in the foundation. All these guys can be complementary pieces to anything you do down the line. When you have Michael Onwenu on the line, you can attack free agency or the draft, the offensive line in a lot of ways. Same with receiver with Bourne, same with tight end with Henry, same with a running back for Rhamondre Stevenson. You can flesh out your depth or draft in a whole bunch of different ways going forward because that's the kind of guy you have. So that makes them really ideal pieces to keep in the building. You're not overextending for one-trick ponies here. You're bringing back reliable players.
It's a great point. Also, the most negative person in our chat, Nagan, is insulted that you think Kendrick Bourne is less than a wide receiver 3. So that's where he draws the line is Kendrick Bourne, and I'm okay with that. And by the way, hold on. I'll let you clear it up here.
Oh, be clear. I said Kendrick Bourne, I think, is probably a wide receiver 4 on a championship team, and it's I think he could be a wide receiver 3. I think the distinction there gets very blurry. Right. But when he was with the Niners, I think he was the wide receiver 3 there, and if you put him there now, I think he'd probably be their wide receiver 4 behind Juwan Jennings, because they'd be in similar roles. I think he's a wide receiver 3 for most teams in the NFL. But if you're trying to build up a high level elite offense, he's probably going to be, he's going to be closer to your Jabbar Gaffney, Dante Stallworth type guy in the offense than your Wes Welker, Randy Moss. He's going to be a complementary piece in your receiving core who is not going to be a starter every game. He's not going to play, probably more than 50% of your offensive snaps in the season. We can call that a wide receiver 3 if you'd like. You can call that a wide receiver 4. I think it's also worth noting that he's a little bit older now and he's coming off an injury. And I'm not going to project it. I think he has been a wide receiver 3. I'm going to assume there's going to be a tiny bit of drop off, at least this season, as he's coming back from the injury.
Yep. And we had a good conversation coming out next week. So I'm leaving for Disney on Sunday. So I will not be around next week, but we pre-recorded an interview with a special guest, and we talked a little bit about Kendrick Bourne. So anyways, so you'll hear more about that next week. But one thing that people kicking around in the chat that Thad and Gary were talking about in the chat was Matthew Judon. And I think this is kind of that next step. And I've been yelling about this Matthew Judon extension since the season ended, really since before the season ended last year, because they gave him the Stephon Gilmore treatment, right? They gave him more money last year, but they took the money from this year's contract to do that. Now he's not being paid enough this year, and he's not being paid close to enough this year, by the way. And so you got to bump him up a little bit this year and then give him an extension. I think he should retire a Patriot. That's my personal opinion. I think Judon has been the face of the franchise these last few years, and I think he's done it graciously. I think he's done it without, without complaint and things like that. So anyways, that's the thing for me, is that I feel like that's coming. Old Man Mob asked what I would give him. Man, that's a good question.
This is tough because it's I'm not even sure who to compare him to contract wise.
Yeah.
with his age and position and everything.
It's tough because, like, you look at Uche signed a 1 year, $3 million deal. Nothing. That's not, in my head, I'm thinking somewhere around, just my initial thought was like 9-ish, somewhere between 9 and 10 for Judon. That might be a little bit low.
He had an average annual salary on the initial contract with New England of $13.6 million.
Right. And so that's the thing is that then do you look at it and say, well, I don't know.
Maybe tack on, you might have to pay him $12 million. Maybe tack on another year at $12 million type of thing. Or 10 and a lot of incentives. Yeah,
bump him up this year. Because now you got to remember now he's getting paid $6 million this year. And so his cap hit is a lot higher than that, but he's only getting paid $6 million a year. And so it's a tough question. So I'm just looking just out of curiosity here. Edge defenders, right? Max Crosby, you're talking about $30 million a year. I mean, let's get serious. Like, we're not doing anything like that, right? Well, that's a cap hit, I guess, but base salary 24. Total cash, Brian Bird's getting 43, although that doesn't really factor in because he just signed a brand new contract. But Max Crosby at 24.5. Trey Hendrickson at base salary is 14.8. If you want to talk about, I don't know if we want to talk about base salary or whatever the case may be, but I think probably, and my dad just texted me his opinion, which was 14 million for 3 years, 14 per for 3 years. And I think a lot of incentives in there. I think that's the biggest thing is you put a bunch of incentives in there where you say, hey, it's not really 14 for 3 years. It's not $42 million for 3 years. We're going to say it's 42 for 3 years. It's not. It actually isn't. Right? It's actually, I don't know, 30 for 3 years. And then we have extra money on top of that for incentives and all those other things. And I think that's the way I would lean, at least.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of ways you can handle this. I mean, I think it's just talk about guys who are versatile and the guys who are team leaders. Judon fits both of those bills.
Right.
And they have the money to keep him happy. I think right now you do what it takes to keep him happy. He's a little bit of an older player, obviously coming off an injury. I don't think you want to commit big money to him long term at this point. But he's still a good player. He's versatile. He's useful in your defense. Pay him appropriate money. Keep him around. Make sure he's happy this year. Keep him around for at least another season or two, especially with Uche probably gone after this season, I would guess. Uche is almost either like he's probably going to be gone after this season or he's not as good as anybody was expecting. And that breakout year was a fluke. Like, it's one or the other.
Right.
I doubt they're going to pay him. So, and obviously, a Keon Light breakout will be huge as part of planning for this position for the future. But yeah, I just give Judon what he wants. It's not a blank check, but he has a lot of leverage here with how much cap space the Patriots have, and the fact that he is kind of the last guy. He and Godchaw are the last guys to get handled, and he's a lot more important to the team than Godchaw is.
I was gonna say if it comes down to Javon Godchaw, I might be okay moving on from. I like Godchaw, but I might be okay moving on from him. Matthew Judon I want to keep around. You know what I mean? And by the way, when I say 3 years,
Godchaw's tough, by the way, because they already cut Lawrence Guy. That was a cap casualty earlier in the thing.
Yeah.
And I was on board with moving on from Devon Godchaw, but you got to do that before free agency and sign somebody to replace him. Like, if they were going to move on from him and go sign Christian Wilkins or somebody like that, I'm on board. Like, that works for me. But now that we're past that, if you cut Devon Godchaw, you're almost definitely not getting a player equal value to
that's a good point.
or equal ability on the field to replace him. And unless they really like, Jeremiah Farms and Sam Roberts and some of those guys and think they deserve big roles. But they added Armand Watts, so that's something. Unless they really like some of those guys, I think Godchaw is another guy where it's like, all right, we'll throw you an extra guarantee or whatever, or whatever it is he's asking for. Meet him in the middle and move on.
Right. Yeah, I agree. By the way, when I mentioned Judon 3 years, what I mean by 3 years is this year, next year, and the year after that. So really 2 years, but you're bumping his pay up this year is what I would be doing. Instead of a 3-year extension, 3 years total, including this year.
Okay.
Anyways, all right, let's get into can we do an ad read quick? And then we'll Well, again, someone asked a question about the number one wide receiver. We're going to talk about that a bit and then come back. All right, so Prize Picks is America's number one daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every single week. From lowering select players' stats projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. And that's just, come on now. That's great. So this week, I'm actually going Caitlin Clark again with more than 3.5 3-pointers made, and Breanna Stewart more than 23 points because, I mean, come on. Like Breanna Stewart and Caitlin Clark, how can we not do that? Okay. And I'm also going Kyle Schwarber with more than a 9 fantasy score, and I'm going with Paul Skeens for more than 5 strikeouts because, like, Paul Skeens,
he's
Livy's
been
boyfriend. Livy's boyfriend, come on now. So, anyways, download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code CLNS for your first deposit match up to $100. That's download Prize Picks, and that's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right. So someone asked a question. Oh, it's way back here. I should have started and I didn't because I'm an idiot. I think it was that. Here it is. Who's going to be our number one wide receiver to start the season? And I don't know if we really can be 100% sure about this, obviously. But I am curious about that. Who do you think is the wide receiver one in name? I guess it's not really.
Well, I think it's tough because I think there's multiple ways to define number one receiver too. If by number one we mean the guy who is going to be the top option on a lot of passing plays and the guy who we think is probably going to get most targets, most yards, most receptions, Eileen Pop Douglas. If by number one receiver we mean the guy who's going to have the most snaps, I kind of think Jalen Polk from the get-go because he is an ex-receiver, unless they want Javon Baker playing in that role. But I think they're going to play Polk there, and with what Polk can do, if we see those one running back, 3 tight end sets, which the Browns liked to do last year, I think the one receiver you're going to see on the field in that situation is Jalen Polk. I think he's in some ways going to occupy the Devontae Parker role in that he might not always be your best receiver, but he's going to be the guy who's always on the field because of the function he plays in the offense, because he can play outside the numbers, because he can be a jump ball guy, because he can be a run blocker. Like, you don't want Pop Douglas in there in your running situations if you only have one receiver, because he can't block for you. He's a slot receiver, and and maybe a Z. Like, he's going to play a certain role for you, but he's not Julian Edelman who you can trust to go in and light people up as a blocker at points. Like, that's just not who Pop Douglas is. Who turns into that this year? Awesome. But I think Polk will be your number one. Douglas will probably be your number 2, and that'll be the top of your depth chart. And then after that, you're going to see a lot more rotation with Baker, Bourne, Osborne, and whoever else makes that roster.
Maybe Taekwon, maybe, depending on who it is.
Booty,
right,
whoever.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's going to to me, it's almost, obviously the top of the depth chart is interesting because I want to see who can separate themselves. But I'm really interested in the bottom of the depth chart as to which one of those guys are going to separate themselves and be able to make the team, right? Whether that's, Booty or, Thornton or, Rager or whatever. So that's really what I'm interested in seeing. So, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting camp. Certainly offensively. I think defensively, it's going to be a question of, like, are they as good as they were last year without the greatest defensive coach in the history of the NFL? So that's going to be interesting. But then offensively is going to be fascinating just because they got so many young, unproven guys, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. So I'm really looking forward to it.
I was Old Man Mob mentions Hunter Henry there in the chat, and I will say I think very different player. But when I talk about like the slot role, I think
Yeah.
when they're in running situations, I think Hunter Henry will almost fill the Pop Douglas role in some ways. He's going to, against very different defenders, he's going to run the routes differently, but I think it's going to be a lot of, he's the guy that's going to attack in the slot and be the top option for the quarterback over the middle of the field. So I am curious, with the Browns last year, when they have their whole outside zone thing they like to do and the stuff that comes off of that, when they got the third down, it was just straight up spread offense. It looked a lot like what the Patriots did last year with Bill O'Brien. It wasn't super different. And I wonder how that's going to look in New England, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of Pop Douglas and Hunter Henry on the same side of the field together, both in the slot, and lots of combination things working the two of them. Because I think those are going to be your two most dependable options on offense. And I think they're going to try to run stuff through them in the passing game when you have the gotta have it situations. Especially if they think Polk can win one-on-one stuff. You can put Polk on the backside of basically anything, and that's kind of, you leave it up to the quarterback to decide. You want to read a two-receiver thing that we're going to play, or do you read the defense and say we're going to just take the one Polk on the backside who we think can win the curl or the go or the dig or whatever you're going to have him running.
Right, slant even depending on the play, So no, it's interesting. It's really fascinating. So we'll see. Go ahead.
Did you see Tom Brady talking about? I think it was on Colin Cowherd talking about the way they used to prepare for stuff and how they'd go through every single play.
Yeah, I mean the preparation in that room, in that organization was incredible. And that's why they won so consistently. And you hear the stories, and they're legendary. And of course, we heard a ton of them at the Brady induction as well. And it was just it's really fascinating to hear, because the best players are the best players because of that, willingness to just go above and beyond at all times. And I think that's a huge part of it.
Well, and I also think we talk about there's a lot of debate online about our QB win, like our wins a QB stat, our wins not a QB stat, and I feel like it's kind of hard to have a definitive take on that because every quarterback has a different role, and it's Gardner Minshew out there. No, I don't think QB wins are really a stat for him. But for somebody like a Peyton Manning, a Tom Brady, somebody who's truly the engineer of the offense and like an additional coach on the field who has full control at the line of scrimmage and is the final guy who decides where the ball goes on every single play, not just on passing plays, but on running plays, and can change anything at the line of scrimmage. Hugely important. And I think that's one thing, there's a lot of things you can measure about Tom Brady, but for a lot of good quarterbacks, I think the guys who have that control, you also, to a degree, have to measure the efficiency of their running game as an extension of their abilities as a quarterback, because a lot of the times they are deciding when you're running the ball, when you're not running the ball, what concept is being called. They're like an extension of the coach in that regard.
No, you're totally right. And
there's nuance there.
Right. And that's the part of it is that, and it's similar to the Celtics here when you talk about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and are they really truly superstars? And then, do you bring them a championship? Do they win those games and those big moments? And it's like, well, there's 10 other guys on the team, and I know none of them play, but there's 7 or 8 guys in the rotation. Why are we focused on one guy? Well, it's like, well, because in those big moments, those guys come up, right? They put their, even when they're not scoring a ton, they put their players in positions to be successful, right? And I think that, that's something that Brady did so well. And I think, Brady was saying when you look back, he's like, I don't really care about the outcome of the play, but I really looked at, am I in the right play when the ball is snapped, right? Did I read the defense right? Am I doing the right thing when the ball is snapped? Am I in the right formation and into the right play? And I think that's, you look at the level the level of detail, right? And I've told the story on the podcast before, I'm sure, but I played ball with Kevin Falk a few times, and I remember him covering me. And he used to say he wanted to cover me in the offseason because I just run. And he's like, I got to run. I'm like, all right, cool. So, and I remember I threw a head fake at him, and he didn't even move. And I'm like, I know I'm not going to fake him out, but he didn't even pretend to go for it. And I just said to him, I'm like, dude, you didn't even nothing. I'm like, I know I'm not going to shake you, but you didn't even. And he goes, oh no, he goes, I was listening to your breathing, and I could tell by your breathing that you weren't going to stop and you were going to keep going. And I was like, you what? What did you say? Like, what do you? But he's like, that's the attention to detail that we talk about. Is like, he's playing against me, some schmuck at a random gym playing pick a ball, and he's thinking about how can I find an advantage over Pat Lane playing basketball against him when I'm 1,000 times better than him. You know what I mean? And those are the things that, it was nonstop every single second of every single day. And you were always looking for something, right? And I think that that's, a testament to what they did. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I also think it says a lot about how quickly their minds work in the flow of things too. Because you can't to analyze things that quickly and make decisions and be able to read what's going on. That reaction time was fantastic. I just wrote do you see the NFL roster rule change that came down today, by the way?
No.
I've just realized we forgot to talk about this. It's not a big change. They just clarified some of the injured reserve return stuff.
Okay.
But one of the there's like just changes around the number of players who can return from IR. Like you get two extra ones in the postseason now, things like that. I don't even think teams really hit the max that often. But the bigger change, I think, is more notable for the Patriots after what happened last season. You no longer, it used to be that if you placed a player on injured reserve before cutdown day, they were done for the season. That was it.
Right. Yep.
Now you have two spots where you can place somebody on injured reserve and designate them to return on cutdown day. And they won't have to, be go off the roster and then be re-signed and put on injured reserve. You don't have to do that whole song and dance anymore for two players. And, last year with, I think, guys like Calvin Anderson and Riley Reif, and Connor McDermott, all guys who were banged up but going to return at some point. They put Connor McDermott on injured reserve and then ended up cutting him. And then he left and he got healthy. And then he re-signed in New England and played again.
Right.
Under this, Patriots could have just kept him, put him on injured reserve and had him designated to return, and they wouldn't have had to cut him and go through that whole thing. He would have just been with the Patriots the whole time, which I think makes a ton of sense for everybody involved. I think this is just a good policy to have, and it means that if you got guys who are injured during camp but can come back during the season, there's less stress involved in that situation.
I like that. I really like that a lot. And again, it's one of those things where, and we've talked about this in years past, where it's like we're getting down to cut down day. There's a guy that's hurt, and he's hurt, and he's probably going to start on IR, but they have to get him through that initial 53-man roster. So you have to cut someone you don't want to cut, right? And this just kind of allows that, quote unquote loophole, right, where you don't have to do that, which is nice, and that allows you to kind of keep some guys that you would normally have to have cut, which I like, and again. One of the things about the NFLPA that's so different is that there's just so many guys, right? And so in any other league, you get you get the main guys that are way up here, and in a lot of the other leagues, it's not quite as many. Mm-hmm. In baseball is like this too, where there's just a billion guys. But in football, those bottom tier guys, there's nowhere for them to go. That's the other part of it, is that like. At least in the major leagues, you have the minors. They don't get paid much in the minors, but at least you can go to the minors, right? In football, it's just like either you're on a team or you're not. You're employed or you're not employed.
They got the bigger practice squad now, right, which I think helps a ton. But
right.
I just think for a while I was clamoring for the bigger practice squad because for the development of players, it's huge.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And anything that you can institute that helps those bottom of the roster players, to me. That's what you should be focusing on as a union, and it seems like that's what they are focusing on, which is a good thing. So, all right,
rare NFLW in terms of rule changes.
Yep. Yeah, I like it. So, I think it's all we got. Before we go, though, I have to give a shout out to the Taunton High girls softball team.
Hell yeah.
We affectionately, the girls started calling us last year, uncles in the outfield. So it's me and a few other teachers / husbands or boyfriends. So I'm not related to anyone on the team, but my good friend is the coach, and her husband, basically they've been together forever, but they're not officially married, is there, and their daughter plays on the team. And so I try to go to as many games as I can. My oldest daughter has been playing softball. She got really into the team this year. So, we've been there more and more, and we're just loud and we're yelling, and it's great. We have a ton of fun. And we chew sunflower seeds and yell for the game. It's fantastic. So, but anyways, this Sunday on Father's Day just won their fourth consecutive state championship, fourth consecutive D1 state championship. Finished the season 25-0, undefeated season. National Player of the Year. With their pitcher was National Player of the Year, Sam Lincoln. She was unbelievable, going to Texas Tech next year. And they're 25-0. Great, unbelievable. Their run differential this year, they scored 248 runs and allowed 16 in 25 games. So it's just, it just absolutely
ridiculous.
Insane. And this is like, it's high school, so they do have a slaughter rule after 5 innings. If you're up by 10 or more after 5 innings, like, they end the game. And so you're talking about, some of these games are ending early. It was absolutely incredible. They just completely dominated everyone all year long. And it was a lot of fun to watch. They were a great group of kids. Couldn't be more proud of them. Again, Taunton 4 in a row is just unheard of. And so it was a lot of fun to watch them all year. And to be a quote unquote uncle in the outfield was a lot of fun. And it was really cool. And then they won. They were out at UMass Amherst for the championship game on Sunday. And we drove out there. Me and my daughter drove out there, and on the field somewhere, celebrating with them after the game and stuff. And it was really, really awesome. And so super proud of them, and wanted to give them a quick shout out before we're done here.
They deserve it. Hell of a season.
248-16 is like, that's one of those, like, we've talked about it on here maybe, but like, when you see some of the high school stats, like if you watch Derrick Henry's high school, watch some of those Derrick Henry like high school clips or whatever, where it's just like, he's just a man among boys, right? And he's scoring like 50 touchdowns and running for like 4,000 yards or something stupid like that. Like, it's that level of like 248-16 where they almost average exactly 10 runs a game and allow literally less than one a game. So pretty incredible. So anyway, so that does it for the shout out there. But I had to do it because they just like absolutely dominated. I was super proud of them. So it was great. So I think that does it.
We got about a month till camp.
Yep. So I'll be.
Rookies will be reporting in less than a month. Veterans a little bit over a month.
That's right. Yep. So I'm going to be out next week, but we do have a non-live show, but a show nonetheless for you next week, and then I'll be back, and we'll have at least one show the week after that, and then we'll be heading to camp.
Yeah, it's gonna get here in a hurry.
Yeah.
Enjoy your vacation there, Pat.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you for coming out, guys. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.